This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. A federal judge has ordered the Turkish national Tufts University PhD student Rümeysa Öztürk to be transferred to Vermont no later than May 1st as she seeks to challenge what her lawyers call her unconstitutional detention in an ICE jail in Louisiana. That order came Friday and followed a separate hearing last Wednesday when an immigration judge denied bond for Rümeysa, declaring her to be a potential so-called danger to the community. Rümeysa, who is from Turkey, was arrested for co-authoring a student op-ed on Tufts' response to Gaza solidarity protests on campus. Rümeysa Öztürk is a doctoral candidate in the school's Department of Child Study and Human Development and research assistant at Tufts Children's Television Project. She's a former Fulbright scholar. On March 25th, masked, plainclothes immigration agents snatched her from the streets of Somerville, Massachusetts, outside Tufts. Surveillance video from a nearby house shows agents approaching her on the streets near her home. In the video, you can hear her scream as the agents move to detain her. Apparently, she said something like, "I'm calling the police," and they said something like they are the police. The Washington Post reports the State Department found no evidence linking Rümeysa Öztürk to anti-Semitic activities or public statements in support of terrorism. The Washington Post reports a State Department memo determined Secretary of State Marco Rubio did not have sufficient grounds for revoking her visa, contradicting public accusations made by the Trump administration. Meanwhile, the Tufts University Democrats and Republicans have released a joint statement condemning the Trump administration's arrest and detention of Rümeysa and its overall attack on international students and their right to free speech. As she awaits transfer to Vermont, Rümeysa is jailed at a privately run ICE jail in Louisiana. For more, we're joined by one of Rümeysa's attorneys, Mudassar Toppa, staff attorney at CLEAR, a legal nonprofit clinic at CUNY School of Law. Mudassar, welcome to Democracy Now! Can you explain exactly what happened? This is all also happening as another judge ruled that something like 130 international students have to have their visas reinstated.
Yes, thank you, Amy, for having me. So there's two parallel tracks in Ms. Öztürk's case. There's the immigration proceedings that you mentioned that involved this bond proceeding that happened last Wednesday, where the immigration judge found that based on this one paragraph memo from the State Department that says that the only evidence that's cited is this op-ed that she co-authored that references a common cause with an organization that was later temporarily banned from campus, as supporting a finding that she was a danger to her community or a flight risk. And so those proceedings are happening on a parallel track to the habeas proceedings that are happening in federal court. And Ms. Öztürk's initial petition was filed in the District Court of Massachusetts. That was eventually transferred to the District of Vermont because at the time that petition was filed, that's where she was. And the court heard arguments on the government's motion to dismiss and our motion for bail and for Ms. Öztürk's release. And this last Friday, the court rejected the government's arguments and held that it did have jurisdiction to hear her claims. And so Ms. Öztürk's transfer has now been ordered. She's been ordered to be transferred back to Vermont. And the court has also ordered a bail hearing to happen on May 9th and a hearing to hear the underlying merits of her habeas petition on May 22nd. And this is important, at least with respect to cases involving, ideological retaliation against students for their advocacy for Palestinian human rights. This is the first federal court that's actually said it has jurisdiction to hear these claims and is moving on to that phase of the process. And with respect to, the temporary restraining orders that have been handed down in other courts regarding visa revocations writ large. Those are happening not just in Georgia, but throughout the country. As far as I'm aware, I think there have been at least 6 TROs issued, and some of those have extended beyond just the individual plaintiffs in those cases.
And I wanted to ask you, this whole issue of her student visa being revoked on March 21st without even her knowledge. Could you talk about that and the implications of that for other international students?
Yeah, it's really chilling, you know. So the same memo that the government submits in Ms. Öztürk's removal case, this 1-paragraph memo from the State Department, it has this underlined portion, and this is underlined by the government itself, that says, due to ongoing ICE operational security, this revocation will be silent. And this is completely abnormal. The government is normally going to notify students that there's been a revocation. Generally, revocations will take place because of, you know, some issues regarding, like, the student perhaps not maintaining a full course load, or a criminal offense that renders them unable to maintain their student status. So typically, students are given notice, and they're given the opportunity to pursue other avenues of relief, potentially, you know, seeking a different type of visa, or self-deportation, or, you know, just leaving the country. In this case, the government was clear. It was intending to abduct Ms. Öztürk. They didn't want her to know that her visa was revoked, and 4 days later, they did exactly what they planned and abducted her in broad daylight in a street on Massachusetts.
And could you talk about the role of Canary Mission and others like it in essentially identifying for the government people that they should be deporting?
Yeah, and, you know, I think at this point there's been a clear connection that we can draw, right, from the doxing organizations, the pro-Israeli doxing organizations, and there is a clear doxing to deportation pipeline that's taking place. And in Ms. Öztürk's case, it's even more apparent, because Ms. Öztürk was not a known organizer or advocate for any cause, really. And Ms. Öztürk's sole sort of publicly identifiable association to you know, the movement against the genocide and the movement for Palestinian human rights was this co-authored op-ed in her school newspaper that was really just asking the university to respect the wishes and the vote of the student senate. And you know, all of a sudden, in February of 2025, almost a year after she's co-written this op-ed, Canary Mission publishes a page on her, doxing her, and alleging that she's engaged in anti-Semitic behavior because of this co-authored op-ed. And less than a month later, she's abducted by ICE. And so it's very chilling that, you know, the government seems to be taking their marching orders from these private, you know, doxing organizations with mysterious funding and backing. And I think it underscores why the government's actions are you know, simply unconscionable.
Well, we'll continue to cover Rümeysa's case, see if they will send her back to Vermont, where the masked agents drove her to before sending her to Louisiana. Mudassar Toppa, thanks so much for being with us, one of the attorneys for Rümeysa Öztürk, a staff attorney at CLEAR, a legal clinic at CUNY School of Law. Again, the Democrats and Republicans at Tufts sent a joint letter objecting to her treatment, as did Tufts University.